Hey guys, hopefully this is working with Restream. Let's see here. It says live. I think so. Cool. Okay. Okay, interesting. Just checking a couple things on the live stream here, guys. There we go. Now I can see the chat. All right, just wanted to make sure that I can see the chat. And we'll see who shows up in the chat. Probably just some bots again, but maybe Restream will block it. Let's see. Okay, so it's just showing a window. Yeah, maybe I'll switch it over to show this. Stop screen sharing. Okay, back to that. Maybe it's a little laggy. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Share screen. Live Restream and show. All right, so it's going to be a little weird to see because it's showing itself over and over again, infinite hall mirrors. But this is a cool tool called Restream. It's website restream.io, and basically it allows me for free right now to stream to a whole bunch of different platforms. I should actually check Twitch. Supposedly this is streaming to Twitch, even Twitter. I'm not sure how that works. And I can do like LinkedIn and a bunch of other stuff. So something I'm just playing around with. I had OBS running and then OBS was crashing. And I'm pretty sure that ends the stream if it does that. And I don't want that to happen. So yeah, definitely check it out if you ever want to stream to multiple platforms. If you don't pay for it, then you have this little Restream icon up here. But, you know, at this point, I don't really care about that. Obviously, my streams are not that great. Let's see, I'm going to mute my phone and try to tune in to my own stream on Twitch. Stream Manager on Twitch. Can I see myself on Twitch? Streaming, let's see. Live. I want to view and just see what it looks like. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm on Twitch. Cool. Just going to show, bring up the activity feed. No one's chatting in Twitch either. And I think I'll just ignore Twitter and see how that goes. All right. So let's switch back off of this. going back. Well, so I'm going to load this up here, Azure Fundamentals. Let's see here. Basically, what we're, no, this isn't right. Yeah, this isn't right. What we're doing is going through the certification skills outline and just kind of talking about what I do know, what I don't know, and then I'm kind of studying along with you guys. You know, if anyone is actually paying attention. If not, it's just me studying by myself. So, one viewer on Twitch. Hello, Twitch viewer. So let's see here. All right, so let's share the screen. Not that window. Entire screen. Yeah, that's weird that this, because it's a PDF. Okay. Bear with me, guys. See what I can get to show up so that I can share it with you guys. Try the entire screen. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, there we go. Yeah, we just didn't have a name. That's fine. Okay. I wonder what I'm streaming at. 720 it looks like. Cool. That's fine. All right. So last time we got the cloud concepts. We went, yeah, all that. We started going into Azure Core services. Yeah, core resources. I don't exactly remember where we ended up here. I think we went through blob storage. I think maybe we stopped right about here. Yeah, I think so. So, and just kind of a quick reminder, the Azure Fundamentals exam is split up so that you've got different percentages, there's different percentage of questions covering different topics. So there's going to be 10 to 15% of the questions talking about core solutions and management tools. And then that's going to be, you know, some amount of covering this. So it's a rough guideline. But obviously, you should know everything in here as best you can. All right, so describe the benefits and usage of IoT Hub, IoT Central, and Azure Sphere. So I know that IoT for Azure is really just this idea of these different connected devices that are kind of pinging up data every so often. You know, it's a lot of like sensors. So you might have some sort of manufacturing plant with a whole bunch of different sensors all over the place, and they're all pinging up data. And so there's a lot of data. And so I'll have to do some research here as to what the difference is between these. I think one of them is just for managing different sensors. Let's see. Okay, we got a new tab. So Azure IoT Hub. Sorry for the clickiness of the keyboard, but that's the way it's going to be. Actually, so we should do IoT Hub versus IoT Central. There we go. New method. Yeah, we know what IoT is. Well, I know, so it's Internet of Things. IoT Hub is a central message, bidirectional communication. Yeah, so it's not only just reading data, it's also sending data down to the devices. Some of that can be kind of controlled messages. So it might be devices that are acting in some way. Okay, so Event Hub doesn't have bidirectional capability. Difference between Hub and IoT Central is that IoT is an application platform, simplifies the creation of Internet of Things solutions. IoT Central helps to reduce the challenges of implementing IoT development operations and management. IoT Central is a fully managed software as a service solution. So it's bar for entry. So I think then IoT Hub is kind of controlling the messaging part of it, whereas Central is kind of setting up the IoT devices. Mute that stream because it's annoying. It's a little confusing. I'll have to say, maybe we can do a little bit more research on that. High-level application platform built-in security features for internet connected device. Share. So yeah, I think Azure Sphere is like software that's running on the device. I think there's even like Azure Sphere devices that come with it. And it's kind of this whole idea that with IoT devices, depending on how you program them, they can be very insecure. And definitely in the early days of IoT, there were a lot of insecure devices that were just very easy to hack. And then you could, people were using them to do all sorts of nefarious things. And Azure Sphere is trying to get a uniform platform on these IoT devices that is very secure. Now, there's definitely a cost to it. And for someone like me who's played around with IoT devices just for like Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and stuff like that, and it's all very cheap. I mean, I can buy an Arduino for like a couple bucks from AliExpress. It's totally different than like Azure Sphere and these like robust industrial devices than what they've got going on. Yeah, the time series insights, I think that's really for dealing with the data and transforming it, and starts to get into some of the big data aspects that you have when you have so many devices. Here we go, IoT Central and Hub. Okay, so it's a PaaS service is Hub versus a SaaS service. So platform as a service versus software as a service. circumscribed solution using Azure IoT Hub and other PaaS services. So it sounds like you would choose one or the other. They don't work together. Okay, so we have auto scaling with IoT Central. Sounds like IoT Central might be a little bit better way to go. Integrated data analysis built in. Yeah, it sounds like there's just a lot more that's kind of built in with Central. But maybe there's more customization in IoT Hub. I think one of them, maybe IoT Hub, is actually going away. I remember reading an email about that. I don't know if that's later. Yeah, it's expiring. Going away. Okay, that's not getting a whole lot of results there. So maybe it's not going away, but okay. So maybe that's good enough. Maybe I forgot the name of this, but a way of remembering it is kind of central SaaS, and then hub is PaaS. I don't know. Try to think about Azure Sphere as kind of this bubble around the IoT device protecting it. I don't know. Describe benefits and use of Azure Synapse Analytics. So we use Azure Synapse, the place I work, HDInsight and Azure Databricks. So Synapse is really like a data warehousing tool where you can kind of have multiple sources coming in and then be able to do different transformations kind of in one place and different analytics in one place. HDInsight, I believe HDInsight would be Hadoop. Hadoop Spark. So this is all big data stuff. So that means you just have millions, billions of rows, gigabytes of data. Not millions of gigabytes, but just a lot of data coming through. To where you kind of have to process it in line, kind of in memory, and do different transformations on it and kind of distill it down before you actually store it, because otherwise the storage would just be insane. And then like any sort of actual queries that people are doing on that data would just take forever. So you kind of need to like distill it down to something that is then more usable, that someone can actually get some answers from. And so Spark, Hive, Kafka, those are different tools for doing that. R is, I used R back in the day in college for statistics. Storm clusters, I don't know much about that. Probably if it's a cluster, it probably has to do with having different like compute resources on either containers or multiple machines, physical machines that then are all working on something and allowing you to basically run some sort of code or functions that then apply probably different transformations to data. So we could dive into a little bit more of what exactly is Hadoop and Spark and really get to know that. I don't think we're going to get that deep here. So I think just kind of knowing that some of the big data type stuff is good enough. Azure Databricks, from what I remember, is their own kind of Spark-like implementation. We could do a versus HDInsight. That might be kind of good to see. HDInsight is cloud distribution of the Hadoop components. So I think you can kind of bring in, if you got some sort of Hadoop Spark type setup from someplace else, you can kind of bring that in. Yeah, these are all open source frameworks. Whereas Databricks is a premium Spark offering. Yep. So, and that's something that Azure came up with. It's kind of like their own flavor of Spark that is going to run more efficiently, better performant than Spark on HDInsight. So I think it's kind of, are you creating this solution on Azure kind of first time and you're okay with being kind of stuck to Azure, then maybe stick with Databricks. But if you wanted to, you're bringing this in or something, you've got other parts of these open source frameworks that you're also bringing in with it, then maybe you go with HDInsight and you don't want to be tied to Azure necessarily. Describe the benefits and uses of Azure Machine Learning, Cognitive Service, and Azure Bot Service. So that one I know pretty well. Machine Learning is, Azure Machine Learning is this kind of set of tools to, I think you can bring in your own machine learning models if you have them. If you don't, you can be creating your own machine learning models in this, like, I think it's called Machine Learning Studio. It's something I played around with once for a tutorial. And yeah, it's when you definitely want to make your own model. You have kind of a more custom scenario, your own, I would just say like custom scenario, and you've got the people with the intelligence, with the skills to deal with machine learning models and creating models and stuff like that. Whereas cognitive services are kind of these pre-built models that you're just calling these services from typically an API. And, there can be different things like detecting anomalies in data. There's a whole bunch of them. I think there's like some image detection stuff where it can kind of tell what objects are an image. There's some stuff for like transcribing, I guess, words from audio. So like a speech to text, basically. I mean, there's a ton of these different cognitive services. So I'm not going to list them all out. It's really cool. And I'm going to probably use some of those for my content creation. Pretty soon I want to do speech to audio for these streams and videos that I create, so that I've got good closed captions, and then maybe those can be translated on the fly by like YouTube, and then maybe someone halfway across the world can be reading along on my videos and actually understand what's going on. Have a really good, decent closed captions. Anyway, so then the bot service is basically, if you want to create your own like chat bots, is typically what they're used for interacting with people in some sort of like chat room type scenario. So most often you'll see it on like websites. You go to some insurance company website, and then there's this little thing that'll pop up, and do you want to chat with like a live representative or something like that? And then you can kind of go in there and ask a question, and the machine learning part comes into play, where it's then interpreting what you're typing in and trying to figure out, okay, these are kind of the different set of responses that I have, or things that I can talk about. How does it match any of these? And kind of, you create like these workflows of where do we go from here? They said this, okay, I think they're interested in this, it presents that, and then, okay, then ask maybe another question, and the yes, no could be, or there's, different topics and stuff that you can kind of talk about, and there's like this workflow of the conversation to try to eventually get them to whatever, buy something or answer their questions or whatever. Let's see here. Describe the benefits and usage of serverless computing solutions that include Azure Functions, Logic Apps. This one I know really well. Functions is something I work with. So Azure Functions is where you can basically upload your own code that is running serverless. So that just means that you're not in charge of like the servers. You're not in charge of updates. None of that. You know that it's on a Windows or a Linux server, but you can't get to the hardware. You can't get to the operating system. You're just focused on your code and running that. And so it's kind of distilling down programming to just the code part of it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a single function. It can be. But yeah, you can have kind of multiple functions that are calling each other, and you can have classes and all that type of stuff. But that's, more for like a programmer who is going to write code. Whereas Logic Apps is more of this drag and drop interface where you have like different transformations, different tasks, call this API, and both of them have triggers. So Azure function always has a trigger, and it's triggered off of typically like an HTTP call, and really kind of underneath the hood, everything is an HTTP call. But it can also be like, it can be linked in with like their blob storage, or the storage bus, or these different Azure services that when, like a new file gets created in blob storage, then it can trigger this Azure function. Logic Apps can also do that. It's just more kind of design first versus the code first way of doing it. And Logic Apps, you could have code. It's just not really meant for that. So describe benefits and usage of Azure DevOps, GitHub, GitHub Actions, Azure Dev Test Labs. So yeah, first you definitely know Azure DevOps is basically this mix of a source control platform like GitHub where you can store your repositories. It's also CI/CD, so CI, continuous integration, CD, continuous development, where you're uploading your code and you maybe have these different pipelines for testing that code. And if if there's any failures, it'll let you know. And then you can have that get pushed out into different environments. If you have some sort of dev environment, then it gets pushed out into that dev environment if you want. So all that is in DevOps, but then you also have some tools for managing projects. And it's kind of built in a very agile Scrum methodology way where you've got features and user stories and tasks, and you've got your board where you can move things, from a backlog all the way through to implementation, testing, and pushing out to production. GitHub so Azure DevOps is pretty much only private repositories. It's really meant for companies who are not really like open source. They're kind of more closed and it's their own code. Whereas GitHub is more this idea for like open source code. You can have private repositories on GitHub, but that's kind of the basis of GitHub is open source stuff. And it's really just kind of a place for repositories to stay and for contributions and collaboration around open source code. There's our first chat, some sort of bot. Let's see if we can block user on YouTube. It's blocked. Can I? Sorry, guys. Just gonna try to view deleted message. Okay, I think that got deleted. All right. First bot came in with some inappropriate comments, and I just blocked him, and I think we're all good now. So sorry about that. So we're on GitHub. Yeah, it's not really a place for like project management as much as Azure DevOps is. I will say it does seem like there's kind of this push, because Microsoft owns both. It does seem like there's kind of eventually this push from Azure DevOps to GitHub. I think, they do a lot of the same things, and I think they're thinking, okay, let's eventually phase out DevOps and go to GitHub. They're not saying that, but you can kind of tell. GitHub Actions, I believe, is kind of their CI/CD solution for once you push up, then you can have it get tested, get pushed out to some sort of environment. Not super clear on that, so I think I'm going to Google that one. And then there are Azure Dev Test Labs. I think it's just kind of this cheaper compute resources for doing your dev test environments. And yeah, basically that. So let's Google our GitHub Actions. Automate your workflow. You see your software. Yeah, build, test, deploy your code from GitHub. So exactly that. Cool. So describe Azure management tools, functionality usage of Azure portal. So the Azure portal is the web front end for managing different services that you have on Azure, creating services, looking at your billing, subscriptions, all that stuff. With Azure, kind of from what I know, pretty much all the functionality you can do in pretty much any one of these. So anything I can do on the portal, I can also do in PowerShell. I can do the CLI. I can set up ARM templates for all that type of stuff. So I've used some of these others in tutorials, but I've pretty much only done the Azure portal. And yeah, it's really nice, click interface, GUI type interface, just more intuitive if you don't exactly know what you're doing right away. But very hard to repeat stuff. You don't want to have to set up whatever 50 VMs through the Azure portal if they're all like the same, or pretty much at all. So then PowerShells, if you know PowerShell really well, you can create different services there. You can do a whole bunch of creation of different services or resources, I should say, through the PowerShell. Probably not the preferred way of doing that. But if you kind of want more of a code way of doing it, and maybe in that code you've got different variables and stuff like that, you're changing in between different resources, PowerShell is a great way of doing that. The CLI is very similar to PowerShell, but I think just a bash script, I think, so just a different scripting tool. Cloud Shell. Maybe I'm getting Azure CLI and Cloud Shell mixed up. I'll have to look at that. I haven't played with the mobile app. I imagine it's not too different than the portal. But yeah, just mobile friendly. I mean, they're both pretty mobile friendly, probably, but. That's the best way of. So CLI is command line interface, creates an environment to create manage resources. Okay, so you would run the Azure CLI on your desktop, on the computer itself. The Cloud Shell is what's running in the portal. You can kind of open up this shell, give it some storage to use, and then you can run your commands in there. So I think that's just kind of the difference between that. And then the Azure Cloud Shell, you can choose between Bash or PowerShell. So functionality usage of Azure Advisor. Pretty sure Azure Advisor is their kind of, clippy like thing of saying like, hey, different like hints and tips and stuff like that. It can also look at some of the resources you have set up and see maybe you set them up insecurely. Maybe you're kind of wasting resources. You've got some sort of VM that's on, but it's basically getting no usage whatsoever. Maybe you can shut that off. Maybe you've got some sort of security issue. There's some activity going on that seems like it got hacked or something like that. So yeah, Microsoft Service provides recommendations based on your deployed Azure Services configuration. Yeah. Cost, security, reliability, operational excellence, performance. So just making sure that you got things set up right. So ARM templates are these, I believe it's JSON, basically like configuration as code type of a template of being able to create resources in a specific way according to this configuration that's in a template. It's in a code template. And supposedly can be a bit of a pain in the butt. Let's see if they talk about Bicep now. Okay, so then Bicep is kind of this easier way of creating ARM templates, supposedly. Supposedly, I'm having connection issues with one of my streams. Looks like YouTube maybe a little laggy. Trying to restore the connection. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look too bad on YouTube, so I'm going to keep going. Well, let me listen here on YouTube real quick. See if it's choppy. Yeah, it looks like maybe I'm dropping some frames. No, it's not too bad now. I think it's pretty good. At least the audio is coming through. So, okay. So yeah, Bicep's supposedly a better way of dealing with that. But basically, you know, if you need to create a whole bunch of different resources, or you want to kind of blow things away and then recreate from scratch, which is kind of the best way of setting up resources on Azure. You want to be able to recreate stuff and not, you know, the whole phrase is treat, you know, your VMs or your Azure resources or whatever as cattle, not as pets. So you don't want to have some server that's hanging around forever and it's got some magic configuration. You're scared of whatever happens if it goes down or something like that. You want to be able to blow things away and recreate them very easily. Functionally usage of Azure Monitor. So I think Azure Monitor ties into application insights a bit, but I think it's also kind of separated and that it works for like VMs and other different Azure services. And the next one's talking about Azure Service Health, and I actually don't know what the difference is between those. So let's Google that. Azure Monitor versus Azure Health Services. Service Health. Azure Monitor helps you understand how your application are performing and proactively identify issues affecting them. So I know, you know, I've definitely looked at Azure Monitor for seeing like, yeah, performance, seeing if there's any like failures or, you know, bugs that we're trying to identify, any exceptions being thrown. Service Health helps you stay informed and takes action when Azure service issues like outages and planned maintenance affect you. Okay. So Service Health is kind of like these very specific Azure issues that affect like a wide variety of people or a wide variety of customers. Versus kind of this is, you know, specifically the performance or issues you're having with these, you know, specific resources that you have. Okay, I think that's good enough. Describe general security and network security features, so 10 and 15%. Once we get into governance and security and CSLAs and costs and stuff, I'm not going to be so hot in that, but we're going to have to look up a lot of stuff, and then we'll learn. Describe basic features of Azure Security Center, including policy compliance, security alerts, security score, or resource hygiene. So this is something I've never done anything with. So let's learn about it. Seems a little intuitive. Maybe they switched to call it Microsoft Defender for Cloud now. I remember hearing something about that. Yeah, Microsoft Ignite. Azure Security Center and Azure Defender are now called Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Makes sense. So it's a tool for security posture management, threat protection, change the security posture of your cloud resources. So obviously when you have anything that, you know, could potentially be exposed to the broader internet or is a target for hackers, you're going to want to protect that. And Azure wants you to protect that. They don't want you to have a bad experience. They don't want their stuff to get hacked. They don't want anything being taken down. So they're going to try to help you out as best they can. Those tools need to harden your resources, track your security. So yeah, I would imagine if you start getting like a lot of traffic from some specific IP address in Russia or something like that, you know, like you're going to start getting some alerts. Maybe they can block that automatically. Different security alerts, recommendations. Have a little fix button. That was easy. Posture management, workload protection. So let's see how deep we need to get in here. Basic features including policy compliance, security alerts. So policy compliance would be, you know, different, like maybe you've got like health policies, or, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on with like European Union and privacy. So making sure that you're compliant for that type of stuff. And Azure is kind of, you know, they know about those policies, and they have kind of certain ways to make sure that you're compliant to those well-known policies, so that it just makes it easier for you. Resource hygiene. Yeah, maybe. There's obviously a lot here. Maybe I'll come back to this. We can do a little deeper dive towards the end. Let's see what else there is. So Key Vault, something I've had a little bit of experience with. Basically just this way of storing data in a very secure and encrypted way, so that, and you know, you typically have kind of this key value pair, so that, you know, with the right credentials, give them your key, and then you kind of get your value out, back out. And so that way you're not storing any of those values in code that if someone hacks a server, they could see your code. Or what happens a lot of times is people upload it to like an open source, like GitHub repository where it's public, and that value is in there. Their secret is in there, and then they can use that to hack you. So definitely don't do that. And use key vault. Describe functionally usage of Azure Sentinel. I've heard of Azure Sentinel, but don't really remember what it is. Azure Sentinel versus Security Sentinel. Azure Sentinel is now called Microsoft Sentinel. We'll be updating these pages. Okay. I guess Sentinel delivers intelligence, security analytics, and threat intelligence across the enterprise for a single solution for attack detection. So yeah, that sounds very similar to the Security Center, aka Microsoft Defender for Azure. What's the difference? And maybe they're kind of reforming some of this stuff. So, something, even though it's as recent as February of 2020, so about a year ago, that'd be 2 years ago. But somewhat recent is still it could be out of date. Many cloud architects and cloud engineers are somewhat confused. Chris, difference. These products. All right. Okay, so we've got security center features, visibility analytics. Visibility of what? Okay, so I wonder if they're getting combined a bit now. So rapidly changing workloads. So, I guess as you're adding new features, making sure they're keeping up with security practices. Yeah, attacks are getting more sophisticated, that's for sure. As people are getting more secure, there's kind of this race, hackers versus white hat, or just hackers versus people trying not to get hacked. Security skills and insurance apply. Yeah. So assess your environment, enable you to understand the status of your resources. So it kind of sounds like security center is like the place that you're viewing kind of the data that Sentinel is then giving, collecting and then doing, so collection, security data across your enterprise, detecting, investigation, and response. And, it's talking about automating your protection. Sometimes you can't respond manually to everything, depending on how many resources you got. You want to automate some of that type of stuff. Artificial intelligence can definitely help. Here we go. So security center, identify and protect, assess risk and compliance, implement protection. Detection, respond, and recover. Find cloud network. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's very clear. It seems a little confusing here. Threat protection. Azure. One of the sources of threat protection information that Azure Sentinel collects data from. Okay. Interesting. So Sentinel's collecting from Security Center, as well as probably other sources to create a view for the entire organization. Somebody's using Azure for threat protection of workloads such as VM, SQL, storage, IoT. Okay, so Sentinel then uses other sources like firewalls, uses devices for active hunting. So it sounds like Security Center kind of works off of the different resources that you have, whereas Sentinel is kind of the infrastructure underlying those resources. But then also you can view stuff in Sentinel and do your analysis and respond and do your automation. Okay, so maybe I've got a rough idea of what's going on. Functional usage of Azure dedicated hosts. Don't quite know. I know that you can have kind of dedicated, physical servers. So if you're a big deal, you're a big company or just have a lot of money to spend, I guess, then you can kind of say, okay, I'm going to have this. This is going to be a physical server dedicated to me, versus sharing a server. You could theoretically have some other company that's got some sort of vulnerability or some sort of bad code that then somehow brings the server itself down, and then now you're both having issues there. So deploy your Azure VMs in a dedicated environment. So they can be to your organization workloads, capacities, and share with other customers. So that's pretty self-explanatory there. But if you're a smaller company, you're probably not going to need to do that, and cost-wise, probably doesn't make any sense. So Azure Network Security, describe the concept of defense in depth. I don't know what that means. Defense, defending oneself. I mean, stuff like having firewalls, limiting your access. Don't start with just having everything open. Start with having everything closed, and then open the ports, IP address as you need. Got a channel or a chat from Kimberly Patty. Just Vasif.tech. I don't know what that means. I'm just gonna put them in timeout and see what happens. I get a feeling that's someone trying to promote their own stuff. That's not so great. Another bot, which is why you need to have security for your YouTube chats. So, and Microsoft's really been pushing like the zero trust kind of concept, where everybody's got to prove that they are who they are and kind of do it, kind of every time that you have some sort of interaction, and you can have like different tokens and stuff that store that, so you don't have to like put your password in every time. But that idea of zero trust and kind of assume, like, block everything and just open what you need, is this way of defending yourself against attacks. So network security groups, don't really know exactly what that is. I don't know what that is at all. Is a better way of putting it. Is your network security groups overview. You can use an Azure Network Security Group to filter network traffic to and from Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. Okay. So it's filter, I think of firewall when people say filter. A virtual network is this, and actually I think I talked about that before, but basically you're kind of creating a virtual network. I don't know how else to describe it. This kind of container in a sense of like different resources that are kind of grouped in how they are connected to a network, so that they can kind of only talk to each other. Yeah. So network security group contains security rules that allow or deny inbound network traffic to or outbound network traffic from several types of Azure resources. Okay, so that really sounds like firewall type of a thing to me. For each rule, you can specify source and destination port and protocol. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, what's the difference between that and a firewall then? So it sounds like a firewall. So versus Azure Firewall. So many wonderful blogs out there. Traffic to and from resources needs proper security to protect data. Well, okay. Okay, different networking levels. So, not that I know this by heart for sure, but you've got your different network layers, right? The OSI models, yeah. So let's open this up in a new tab so we can see a little bit nicer. Zoom in on it. So, yeah, physical layer, that's like the electrons going over the wire, kind of a that level. Data link layer, defense format of data on the network. So I think how do these different bits, how are they sequenced? I think would be the data link layer. Networking layer is then, yeah, which stream are those bits going through? Then we've got different protocols that data is formatted. So TCP versus UDP. UDP just kind of broadcasts everywhere, and I don't think it's bidirectional. So that would be like a YouTube stream, whereas TCP is kind of from a source to a destination. I think it would be bidirectional. Session layer maintains connection, is responsible controlling ports and sessions. So that, yeah, sounds like very, managing the specific sessions between those different IP addresses and the ports that data is going through. Shows that data is in a usable format and is where data encryption occurs. Okay. So in the actual data that's being sent, so if you ask for some sort of web page, it's looking at that format that's coming through. And if you have like HTTPS, then it's encrypting it and then decrypting it on the other side. Human computer interaction layer where, okay, so then the application layer is like the browser, right? Or some sort of FTP client or email client browser, client, that you're using to use that. So just kind of a rough overview of that. So then both serve precise at different network layers, levels. So Azure Firewall, manage cloud network security service, stateful firewall deploys on any virtual network and protects Azure virtual networks, VNets, resourced by filtering both network and application level. I shouldn't have closed that. Let's see, let's reopen those. Reopen. See back in. Oop. So network layer, which, okay. So that's going to be controlling where the data is going. Application level is way back up here. I'm talking about browsers and stuff. So filtering both network and application level traffic. Use admins to create traffic filtering rules, which you can enforce across multiple subscriptions networks. So it's a little confusing as to how it would somehow filter application level, somehow preventing your browser from going to certain resources. Azure Firewall has built-in high availability. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be browser. It could be, you know, like I said, email, FTP, different stuff like that. Azure Firewall has built-in high availability and multiple availability zones. So yeah, availability has to do with uptime, just a reminder. Unrestricted cloud scalability, can scale this, okay. Service tags for intelligence, outbound services. Network address translation, oh man. So we start to get into the hardcore networking stuff that I heard of, but don't know very well. Forced tunneling, interesting. Our network security group. Source to simplify virtual network security enforces and controls network traffic, subnets, network interfaces, and security rules. Yep. So we're talking about where that traffic's going. Yeah, sources, ports, so this, you know, source IP, ports, destination IP, those ports, the protocols, TCP versus UDP, different stuff like that. Person of Azure Firewall and NSGs. Oh yeah, network security group. OSI layer, each service has information helps IT teams understand how data is sent or received. Layer 1 is physical layer, goes up to 7. Yep, I just talked about all that. So Azure Firewall is 4 and 7. 4 and 7. TCP and UDP. Okay. Whereas NSG, oh, okay. So Azure Firewall is not dealing with like which IP addresses, and I guess which ports. We're talking about ports here though, so it's just IP addresses. Whereas NSG does get kind of more detailed there. Filter. Okay, so that's confusing. Because didn't they mention the network layer up here for Azure Firewall? Network. Ooh. Network, which is layer 3. But then they're saying only layer 4. But then here they're saying adept at analyzing and filtering layer 3. So it's a little confusing. Maybe Azure Firewall has a little bit more. It sounds like NSG is just very specific, like rules of like, okay, I'm going to block this IP and this port. And like you have to type in everything manually and you have to know. Whereas Azure Firewall does more of this analysis and threat intelligence based filtering, right? You know, it's using data and probably some AI stuff to kind of try to figure out, okay, what needs to get blocked. So to me, that sounds like the biggest difference here. And I don't know if Azure Firewall is eventually replacing NSGs or something like that, or it's gonna, you know, I don't know. But I think that's where we're at with that. So that covers those two. So then Azure DDoS protection. So DDoSing stands for denial of service. What's the first D? Oh, that's right, distributed denial of service. Yep. So that's where we've got a whole bunch of computers all pinging one computer, or I guess doesn't necessarily have to be one computer, right? I think it's just you get a whole bunch of traffic targeting something. And the whole idea is that they're trying to overwhelm pretty much, you know, the network layer of whatever, you know, it can be like a customer and all the services they provide, or maybe a specific service or specific website, you know, is kind of usually what you see, and try to crash it, bring it down. Or when you have that much traffic, like certain vulnerabilities can be exposed that they can then try to exploit and get somewhere, hack in or something like that. So Azure DDoS protection is them detecting that and trying to, you know, shut that off. You know, okay, we're getting just a ton of traffic from, you know, this region or something like that, or these specific, you know, range of IP addresses or something. Yeah, we got some more spammers on the chat. Spam, spam, spam. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so Azure can detect that and automatically cut that off and help you out. Because obviously, well, you know, in a way, it kind of means more money for them to have like some sort of DDoS, because it's like, well, it's, you know, more compute, but then if it brings things down and it affects their other services, other customers, obviously that's not good. So they don't want that. And they want you to have a good experience. They want everything to be secure and run well. So describe identity, governance, privacy, and compliance features. So we got through all this. Okay, that wasn't too bad. I was feeling a little worried about this. I think we're going to have to dive into that security under a little bit more. Like I said, I would like to know just what they're looking for here. But yeah, describe governance. I'm streaming. Sorry. So what time are we at here? So it's been about an hour 20. Should I cut it off there? We got through 2 of them. And then we've got 2 more. 2 really thick ones to talk about. but I think it's a good I think it's a good place to stop. I did about an hour and 20 before, and I'll cut off some of the fat and stuff here, and it'll be about the same. So about an hour each. So I think, yeah, we'll do a part 3. Maybe I'll stream that tomorrow. Doesn't really matter because no one's actually attending the live streams other than bots, but why not do it? So yeah. So this has been the Coding Canal with your host, Jesse Canal. Thanks for watching, listening. If you got any questions on any of this stuff, feel free to put it in the chat, or you can message me in different ways. LinkedIn, Twitter. I got pretty much every platform is the Coding Canal. So you can find me that way. Yeah, thanks guys. And I will talk to you later. Peace.